And so she said that we can't do it because we can't accommodate him. Well, accommodating him essentially meant he needed a stand-up desk and some dictation software and some other like computer-related things for his phone, which were very easy, reasonable accommodations. He could do his job and do his job well. He certainly could perform the essential functions. And so what happened was, as he was asking for more money, this is January, early February. February, they're moving offices. Amanda says, we're not going to accommodate Chad Huffman. We don't want to. We don't have space for him in the new office, and they terminate him. And so those are the four individuals that have claims actively against ACR.
Wow. Okay. Maybe let's talk a little bit about what was going on. Obviously, you mentioned that Amanda was highly religious, but what kind of ground did she think she had to stand on when she was, doing all of these blatant discriminatory, things to these people?
Well, I can only speculate based on kind of what she was putting out there. But Amanda was the type of person that would call people in to meetings and say, I want everyone to tell me if they're comfortable putting their hand on someone and praying for them. And I want you to raise your hand right now if you're comfortable doing that. And some people would raise their hand, some people wouldn't. And then she'd say, I took note of people who didn't raise their hand. Indicating that if you're not religious and not willing to pray for people, it's not someone she wants in her company. She would make people walk with them and scream out their sins that they had for the past year and things like that to repent for kind of bad things that they did. She would make posts where Donald Trump would say he's supporting religious rights and said, Donald Trump will protect me from anything that, I do based on my religious beliefs. And so I don't have any good answer for that other than I think that she thinks she's entitled to do whatever she wants based upon her religious beliefs, which is just wrong.
And okay, so this case is still in progress. So what can you tell us a little bit about what outcomes you're hoping for your various clients?
Well, I would love nothing more than be the first person to get trans rights recognized in Ohio and make sure that every time the case is cited, it's Corey Buzzard v. Amanda Ratliff. And so obviously although Ohio law follows federal law, Ohio law has not specifically recognized transgender rights under its anti-discrimination statutes. And although I think it's inevitable and it's a logical step, it's just been an area of dispute that the Supreme Court has now settled. So it's now about expanding the federal law, which Ohio law follows and says that it follows and says it has the same rights as federal law, getting Ohio to recognize this right that was previously disputed about whether or not it was covered by Title VII. So that's goal number one. And goal number two is obviously holding Amanda accountable and making her recognize that her doing whatever she thinks whatever she wants to do based upon her religious beliefs is not an appropriate way to run a company. You have to do so in a non-discriminatory manner, despite what your personal religious beliefs are or what your personal religious beliefs call for. If your religion is discriminatory, that doesn't mean you can act discriminatory in the workplace.
Got it. Okay. So you
gave my clients.
Right. Okay, so you gave us some takeaways here, which I think you pretty well covered. But the first is trans rights are protected. And we talked a little bit about just now about how that's sort of true in Ohio.
Trans rights, I would say LGBTQ rights are
Yeah.
protected in Ohio.
Okay. Okay. Um, and then your next one is that you are protected for speaking out against trans rights. So that would be Sherry in this case, I suppose. But do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, similar to, I don't know if we talked about the hit case before, but I previously had a case against a guy named Aaron Gostanian that was resolved, where Aram was a guy that wanted to turn his properties from black back into white, and we had recordings of him saying stuff like this. And my guy said, you can't do that, and I'm not going to do that. And he refused to do that and kept renting to black people, and he was then retaliated against. And so the message is, if you observe any sort of discriminatory conduct by your employer or superiors, you are protected if you speak up. The right thing to do is speak up. You are protected if you speak up under Ohio law. And if you are terminated or an adverse action is taken against you because you speak up, you are entitled to redress for whatever that conduct is.
Perfect. Okay, let's wrap this one up and talk a little bit about why Cooper Elliott is uniquely qualified to represent victims of discrimination.
Well, we support victims of discrimination. We have individuals in our firm who are on boards of minority rights organizations, including trans rights. And it's an area that has not been focused on, that we think it's time that the state of Ohio recognizes as a clearly established prohibition against Ohio citizens. So in the workplace.
Perfect. Are there any resources available to victims that you might direct them to if it turns out that you aren't able to represent them?
In Ohio, I mean, the OCRC is always your best. It's always your best source. That's where you go to file complaints if you believe you've been a victim of discrimination or retaliation, or would like to make a complaint about it.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't have any further questions for this topic. Kim, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Nope. That was good stuff.
Yeah, I think this will be a great article, and we can. I do remember the discriminatory landlord article. I believe we can link to that one too. So just for our records here. Okay, cool. Let's talk about Chamberlain. Thank you for sending along the mediation statement. I did pull some questions out of that, but I'll let you fill us in mostly. So give us some background on Chamberlain's in life and how she came to be in this situation with Dr. Rack.
Yeah, I think the mediation statement pretty much lays it out in detail. So I don't know that I'm going to expand much beyond that. But other than, look, I mean, Wendy had a very tragic life, from her mom telling her that she was a mistake and didn't want her, to being abused by her parents and the counselors before she turned the age 18, to running off and joining a cult at age 18 because she felt like she had no direction or path forward in life based upon what she had been through, being married off by the group's leader to a husband who raped and abused her, which she then escapes from, comes back to the United States, where she then is engaged in a period of her life where she experiences with drugs and doesn't have much high self-worth, and eventually gets to a point where after her significant other passes away, turns her life around, goes to medical school, pays for it all by herself, is trying to reestablish relationships with her kids that were taken from her by her abusive husband. She successfully does that. She becomes a successful pathologist at Cleveland Clinic, but understands that with job stressors and all that she's been through, it's probably good, and she's probably ready for some counseling to help get her through her prior 40 years of torment. And she does that originally with a psychologist who ends up abusing her as part of that relationship. But she maintained a good friendship with him, and he actually helped transition her to somebody else who he thought would be beneficial to her, and that's Dr. Rack. And then so she specifically goes to Dr. Rack to, one, kind of help with her past issues, but also kind of help understand what exposes her to these circumstances in her life where she may be taken advantage of,